Hi, welcome back, and this is the second video I'm putting together in a series about how to make a time-limited short film. Now this video in particular is concentrating on selecting a camera to use for the competition. As you can imagine, there's a huge range of cameras and possibilities for making a short film, and each of them has certain pros and cons and abilities and limitations, and I'm just going to go through a few of those today and give you an idea of what might be a good thing to pick and choose to help you with making your short film and getting the best result you can out of it. Now the first camera I'm going to have a look at is quite an obvious one. It's your cell phone. Now just about everybody's got one these days. The cameras on the back of them, they're small, they have a few limitations in that they're not that good in low light and that sort of thing, but they do come up with a fantastic image, and just about everybody's got a phone that will at least shoot HD if not 4K. There are limitations on using a cell phone. It's not very stable necessarily. It doesn't have great microphones or anything like that. You can get a lot of these things to add into them though. We've got the Rode Video Micro Mic, for example, which will plug into just about every cell phone except the iPhone 7 at the moment. But the key thing is that if you do have a cell phone, you can make a short film. Anyone on your crew can pull a phone out of their pocket on the Saturday morning or Friday night, start shooting, and there's no reason you can't make a really good high quality film out of it. You just need to respect the limitations of what the camera on the phone can do. So don't try and go and shoot in a dark room or something like that, or somewhere that's heavily underlit. In a case like that, you're going to get a lot of grain in your footage. The sensor's going to have to throw more power into it, and it'll just create lots of noise and things and won't look that good. The next step up is your really cheap point and shoot cameras. Now I've got this thing here because it was just sitting on my desk. It's just a little camera. You can pick them up for about 50 bucks. Seriously, it's actually quite hard to find them to buy because most of the time they're just given away as gimmicks with things that you buy online, which is where I got this one. I can't even remember exactly what it was I was buying, but it came with a free camera. Now this particular one just runs off AAA batteries. It doesn't even have a specific battery, and takes an SD card. It shoots 720p footage. And has got a big monitor on the back and a big monitor on the front. It's a little lens, but it actually picks up an okay image. Like your cell phone, it's not going to be very good in low light, but if you haven't got a lot of money, you want to make a film, you haven't got a cell phone that can shoot it, it's an option. It works. Great thing about this is it's also completely waterproof and will go underwater up to about 50 feet or something like that. The next camera I want to show you is a more sophisticated point and shoot format. Now this is the Sony RX100 Mark V. It's a great little camera. It's got a good flip around screen. It will shoot 4K and it will shoot up to 1000 frames per second. It's also got a lot of other really amazing features and abilities in it that most point and shoot cameras don't have, and even some things that a lot of DSLR cameras don't have. The lens in the RX100 Mark V is an incredible piece of glass. It's f1.8 and it's got a 0.05 of a second autofocus on it. That's incredibly quick. It comes up with an absolutely beautiful image. It works really well in low light. It's got a lot of other features on it that you only find in a lot more expensive DSLRs. You can pick one of these up for under $2,000. You do want to get extra batteries with it. The battery on here will disappear on you, and it takes normal size SD cards. Buy fast SD cards if you want to use some of the advanced features in it, 9500 megabit per second kind of things. That's the kind of power this thing's got. It can put through that much data. Those at the moment are sort of in the sub $2,000 range. Don't be afraid to pick up an older camera either. Just for a bit of perspective, this is what I shot my first two 48 hours films on. This is a Sony HVR 820 TRV H20e. It only shoots SD. It shoots 3x2, so not even letterboxed or anything like that. HD wasn't even a thing when we picked this thing up. We have done a number of films on this thing. It shoots on digital tape. If you've got one of these around and you want to shoot on this, I'd say go for it. They're a lot of fun. You're going to get a lower resolution image and not as sharp as anything else. Once again, low light isn't great, but Something like this is a lot of fun. It's got a good viewfinder, good screen, something like a 12 or 16 hour battery life. You won't find that in anything else. I'm sure the judges would give you some extra points just for having the balls for trying it out, really. Now, if you want to go up and budget a little bit from your point and click cameras and do something a little bit more special and have something with a faster sensor and better low light performance and things like that, and a bit more stable, then I highly recommend getting yourself a DSLR camera or DSLR equivalent. The one I've got sitting here in front of myself is the Sony A7S. Now, this camera in particular is one that I got because it suited what I like doing. The Sony A7S in particular is a camera that's absolutely incredible in low light, and I really like shooting in dark environments. So this is why this particular camera is one that really stood out for me and was something that I was going to get a lot of use out of. You can pay a couple of $1,000s less and get something that has just as good quality footage and everything, not quite the same low light, but some other features that the A7S doesn't have as well. The A7S only shoots in HD, not 4K. There are a lot more 4K cameras out on the market now that can do absolutely amazing things. Steer clear of any arguments between Sony and Canon and Panasonic and stuff like that. It doesn't matter which camera you get, they're all absolutely fantastic these days. The differences is only in personal preference. Some people like the different menu systems and that kind of thing. Don't get tied up on a brand. Find the camera that's right for you. Go by features, not brand. Or you're looking for a camera, not a religion. That's the key thing to remember. And don't forget also, there are a lot of alternative cameras available as well that have different properties and may work better or worse for you depending on what it is that you're wanting to do. If you want to get into tight spaces and have something extremely portable, there's this, the Sony QX10. This is one of my favourite little cameras. It's tiny, but it packs a hell of a punch and shoots a really good full HD image these days. Initially these came out, they only shot 1080 by 1440, but firmware update on them makes them go to a full 1080 by 1920. This is a great little camera. It just sits on the back of your cell phone, which you use to control and monitor it, and you can get a really great image out of this and have a lot of fun with it. If you want to do a lot of motion shots, something like the DJI Osmo here, of course, is an incredibly handy. Now, this is the same camera that they put onto the Phantom 4 drone, and it's on a 3-axis gimbal here. If you want to do motion shots, run around the streets getting action things, and you don't want really shaky, bad, hard to see footage, this thing here is absolutely amazing. There's a lot of accessories available. Once again, it does need a cell phone attached to it, and the batteries don't last a hell of a long time, but they're really quick and easy to replace, and it records onto a micro SD card which just fits straight into the side of the camera here. A good thing to point out with the Osmo is it's also got a microphone jack port on the front of it, so as well as having the cell phone here, you can hook up the Rode Mini Micro mic. They've got this great little clip-on adapter here, and you've got a shotgun mic here sitting on a gimbal machine, and you can run around with that rig. It's just a fantastic little setup, you know, almost a full camera rig and everything you want for a 48 hours film. You don't have zoomable lens. That's the only thing that goes with this one, is that the lens ratio in it is fixed to what you get in the camera. You can get alternatives to that gimbal. There's the same handle and piece of hardware can come with a mobile 3-axis gimbal on it as well, which is quite smart, and if you've got an iPhone, it talks to the iPhone and will even do active tracking and follow you around the room automatically and that kind of thing. So those are some great alternatives. You can go a bit crazier, however. But if you really want to go nutbar and you've got much more money than sense, then you can go and get yourself something like this. Now, this is the Blackmagic 4K Cine camera. It's one of the slightly older cameras now of the Blackmagic range. As the name suggests, it shoots 4K and it does an absolutely incredible job of it. There's a couple of other Blackmagic cameras that are a bit cheaper and smaller form factor, and a couple of others that are a lot more expensive and bigger form factor. One of the things you'll find with Blackmagics is that the footage you get out of them is comparable to the Red cameras. In some cases it's been rated as better than the Red cameras. That should spark a few arguments in the comments below. It's not something you're going to want to go and get just for doing a 48-hour film though. If you can get hold of one of these, you might want to consider using it, but you need to be a bit careful, and here's why. Now I'm going to talk about the logistics of choosing a camera and what the implications are of each particular form factor that we've just been having a look at. So that's a fairly good representative sample of the types of cameras that are available for people for making their competition short films. What you need to have a think about is the type of film that you want to do, and try and pick a camera that works for what it is that you want, and have a good think about the pros and cons of the different types of cameras. You might want to be doing something really fancy, but if you haven't got $25,000 to go and spend, you're not going to be able to pick up a 4K Cine camera. So the first consideration is always going to be money. You've got your $50 camera, your $2,000 camera, your $5,000 camera, or your $25,000 camera. Though don't, of course, forget your cell phone. There are pros and cons for each of these. The cheaper cameras, of course, much more accessible. You might even be able to get a couple of them. The more expensive cameras, yeah, you're going to get a fantastic image out of them, but there are other problems with that as well that I'll get into in a minute. One of the best features of your point and shoots and your cell phone is that you can just pick them up and start shooting. It's real quick. You don't have to mess around with anything. You haven't got a lot of gear to set up. You're going to be able to just say, line up a shot, push the go button, record it, and run. You're done. That's the pros. The cons are you need to be careful about your lighting levels. You need to check your contrast in particular, so you make sure you don't have really bright daylight coming through and a dark light in front of you. And you need to be careful about the motion on them, because all of these things, when you're holding something like that, you've got a lot of twist and a lot of shake are going to come up in it. You can compensate for those things by adding more lights, getting a gimbal for the camera, all of that sort of thing. And you're also going to have a limited lens choice on these sorts of things. Some of that's mitigated by getting the top end of the point and shoot kind of things. And phones like the iPhone, they compensate fantastically for having such a small lens and still managing to pull a cinematic look out because of the number of elements they've got in that lens. Your next level of camera is going to be a bit more pricey. This is your DSLR type thing, and for that extra money you're going to get a heavier body. You're not going to get as much movement and twist. You do need to watch out for, though, is overheating. A lot of DSLR cameras are photography cameras. They're not really designed for doing a lot of video shooting, maybe more so now than they were, but they still have limitations in the sealed body and the form factor that they come in. Particularly things like the Canons, if you're using something at the lower end like the 60D or the 70D. It's a great camera, but you can only shoot for about 12, 15, 17 minutes at a time, and you need to put the camera down and let it cool. A lot of people will come up with ideas like being able to override the automatic shutdown and putting magic lantern and things like that on your camera, and you can do that. But you need to also remember that as the camera gets hotter, it makes more errors writing to memory and and your compression's not as good. Your image is going to get a bit block error and posterized and things like that. Keep an eye on that sort of thing when you're using your camera. It might just be that you have to shoot economically. If the DSLR is the camera that you've got, it does take absolutely beautiful images. Learn the limitations of your camera shooting video, take them seriously. Several times we've had people that have been partway through a 48-hour shoot and they've cooked their camera sensor. It shoots over. A lot of your cell phone accessory lenses like the QX10 and this one here that just fits over the existing lens on your cell phone, they can do some pretty cool stuff. Once again, they do have their own limitations. It does need a cell phone running. The battery life is short in it, but it does come up with a beautiful image. These things here, they do have their limitations as well. They are just an accessory that slots over the current lens. You might end up spending a lot of time adjusting it. It might not give you quite the colour and shape that you're expecting. Once again, learn these things, play with them, have a go, see if it works for you. If it's what you need for your film and it's what's available to you, go for it, definitely. When you get into the more expensive cameras, they're definitely going to do everything you want cinematically. You're going to have a beautiful image. You're going to record extremely crisp quality. You're not going to have any artifacting or problems with things overheating or anything along those lines. You're going to have incredibly good data flow. It's going to be consistent data flow and that sort of thing. The cost in it is these cameras are going to take a lot longer to set up. You're going to have to mount them on a tripod, move them onto a stabilizer or a set of handles. They're a lot heavier to lug around. You can't just have one person pull them out their pocket like you can with your cell phone and go, let's shoot. You're going to spend a lot more time with the logistics and having to find a couple of people to camera assist and all that sort of thing. Your cameraman's arms are going to get tired and he's likely to start shaking if you're shooting hard and fast. These sorts of things also need to be taken into consideration. So the more you spend on a camera, just keep in mind that the more you spend on a camera and the more complicated a rig is, the more people you're going to need to look after it and run it, and the longer it's going to take to set up shots. If you've got a crew that can do that, then that's absolutely awesome. If you've got a group of people that haven't worked together, think twice about whether you're going to use the Blackmagic camera or pick up your cell phone or a DSLR. Another major consideration when choosing the camera you're going to use is the audio on it. Now, you can get away with a bad picture, we keep saying that. You can't get away with bad audio. If you're going to use something like one of the small point and clicks like this, you're going to need something else to record audio with. Even the RX100, for some reason, this is one of the most amazing cameras I've ever owned, to the point I bought two of them. It doesn't have an audio in jack. When you get to the DSLRs, you do have audio on. You can put something like the Rode Video Micro Mic on top of it. Most cell phones have got an audio jack that will take a small microphone, which is where you can use this small little puppy here, or a similar one. There are a couple of different Rode mics. You can also get a microphone now that will go into the lightning port on the iPhone 7, so that's rescued as well. If you've got a GoPro 3 or a GoPro 4 and you're going to use that, that's cool. That's got an audio input. The GoPro 5 doesn't. You'll need to get one of these little USB-C to audio port adapters. That's got a little preamp and everything built into there, which is why it's such a big clunky box. That lets you plug in, once again, the Rode mics with the little audio jack. So I guess I should finish rambling on about all the gear I've got and come to some sort of conclusion and give a bit of advice on something that would be good for you to get. If you were to walk up to me now and said, hey Tim, I need to buy a camera today, I don't want to go shopping, what am I going to get? I would say go get the A7S II, and I would say get a couple of lenses with it, the fast 35 and maybe a short zoom. That would be a really good basic setup to get you going. If you don't have the kind of money it takes to get something like the Sony A7s, then the MX5 will be a very, very good compromise. You probably want to get something like the Zoom H1 audio recorder and the Rode Video Micro Mic to complement it. Don't forget the MX5 doesn't have onboard audio jack, so you need something else to record directional audio. Something like the Sony MX5 100 or the Lumix or equivalent camera to this is a really, really good way to go. Try not to spend under $500, you're going to get something that'll disappoint you. Failing that, if you're not particularly in the market for one of these sorts of cameras, don't be afraid of shooting on a cell phone. I've seen some absolutely amazing stuff just shot on the phones. You might want to get yourself something like the DJI Mobile Osmo as well. That'll turn a cell phone into something that's got a lot more stability and power, and you can't go too wrong with that combination. So I hope you found that useful. Thanks for watching it all the way through. I hope you've learnt something and you've got something to gain from it. If you've got other advice on cameras and information about things that expands on what I've had in the video, please do put it in the comments below. We want to build this up and get people as much information as possible. Definitely put your experiences down there and everything. Don't forget to click on the subscribe and like and notify buttons and share this out with other filmmakers that you know. Hopefully they'll find it useful as well. Coming up soon, we're going to have another vlog on lighting and then one on audio gear. Now those are, like this one, just going to be about equipment, not the use of it. We've then got others coming up about production, use of lighting, use of your camera, use of grip gear, and looking at other different things you can get that help. Camera's right at the core of it, but there's a lot of other stuff around it. So we'll see you tomorrow with another one of these. Have a good evening.